Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today we are here with another board game review of Undaunted North Africa, and I will be telling you that why you should play this game. Undaunted North Africa is a two-player only game. This is a war game between the long-range Arabian team, LRDG, whatever they are called, and the other one is the Italian team. And they are fighting both in the North African during the World War II, and the game does come with a scenario book which contains around 11 missions, I think. These are 11 scenarios, so you can play them in any order that you like. You can play them in sequence, or later on, you can pick and choose whichever scenario was your favorite to replay it as well again. It's not a campaign, so you can pick and choose any one of these. Now, the game is going to give you a detail, or each scenario is going to give you a detail of how to set up the map. The map is made up of these individual square tiles, so and these are all double-sided, so it's going to tell you how to set it up for the scenario, and it's going to give a specific mission to both of the teams. Now, the two teams are going to be highly asymmetrical, and their objectives are going to be against each other as well. So this is an asymmetrical competitive game. Now, the game mechanics are around deck building and war. So that's not a normal concept that people are familiar with, because normally war games are just you select which token you want to move on the board, or token means soldier, want to move, and that's it. But in this one, you actually need to have a hand of cards to actually make the soldiers work. So it's going to tell you that at this turn, which options of soldiers you have to actually you can move, because maybe they are exhausted, and some may have injury and are unable to move. So that kind of mechanism is there. Of course, you can boost up their morale, you can have more of a certain type of soldier, and that's the strategic decision that you will be doing while making your deck. Now, let's go through a turn to understand that how the game actually works. Now, each player is going to start with their own deck of cards, and each scenario is going to tell you that which soldiers are going to be available in the game, where do they start, which vehicles are going to be in the game. So yes, there are vehicles in the game, not this one. This is just a toy, but there are going to be vehicles in this one, which is a difference from the previous version of this game, which was called Undaunted Normandy. So Normandy was just a soldiers combat, but in the North Africa one, they upgraded this game. This is a sequel, and they added vehicles in it. Now, how the game works, it is slightly different than Normandy. So if you have played Normandy, some rules will be different, and the game rule book is going to teach you that what mechanics have been changed for what reason. Anyway, so how the game works is it's going to tell you that how each player is going to build up their deck from a supply of cards that are going to be available. So normally, based on the availability of soldiers, it's going to tell you to take one card normally each from everyone, and two or one fog of war cards. Then you're going to shuffle them, and then you're going to pick on each turn. Both the players are going to do the same thing. They're going to pick four cards from their shuffled deck, and then that's the hand of cards they are going to play with. The first thing they are going to do when picking up these cards is they are going to decide for the initiative. The game by default comes with an initiative token, which is going to show the brown side, which is the LRDG side, and the white side, which is the Italian side, or cream color. Okay, so these are the two colors that are available in the game. The initiative of the game is going to tell you, starting scenario, that who has the higher initiative. So that means who goes first. But in each round, you get a chance to change that by sacrificing a higher ranked soldier from your hand. So for example, right now, I have these cards in my hand, and I will be thinking one of these cards must be sacrificed as an initiative order, that who is giving the orders this turn. So that soldier will not get to take their turn, but others will. So for example, right now, if I use my scout card which is having a value 6 on the top here. So this is going to give me a 6 level initiative. So that higher the number it is, the better you have a chance that maybe you will get the initiative. So I will secretly play this, and the other player is going to secretly from his draw deck or his 4 cards, he's going to secretly pick 1 card as well. And then both are going to reveal at the same time. So in this case, I had used a 6, but the other player used a 7 card. So that means this player, which is the Italian player, is going to win the initiative. And my card, even though I had wasted a higher card, but it just went to waste because they still get the higher initiative. So these cards go in your discard pile. So every player is going to have their own discard pile as well. So any cards you keep on using will keep going there. Now winning the initiative means the token in this case, so let's say it was on my side before, it will flip to the Italian side, and now the Italian player goes first. Of course, there are certain advantages of going first, that you get to kill other people first, you get to capture something first. Of course, that's more understandable. The other thing that is going to happen is that in case this player is able to kill or do an injury to one of my soldiers which is in my hand, so I have to immediately, so for example, I had an engineer card, and in this turn he was successful in successfully giving an injury to the engineer, then I have to immediately discard or sacrifice, completely remove this card from the game at all. And that already limits my hand to do. So that's another problem with having a lower initiative, that maybe if you get an injury, you don't even get to move that soldier which just got injured, which is thematic. But that's why getting a higher initiative is important, but that also means you will be losing one of your cards just for that turn. Now, then whatever hand of cards you are left with, you are going to play both the soldiers. So first the player with the higher initiative is going to play his cards, and then the other player is going to play his cards. Now how those playing the cards work is, you're going to one by one pick a card and then put it in the discard pile, and under the bottom of each of these cards there are going to be some actions given, and you can take any of these actions. These actions can be something like move, it can be something like attack. Those understandable. I will not be going into detail of all the actions, but these actions can be used. So you will be picking only one of these actions. You cannot do all of them. You have to pick one action, what you're going to do this turn. So for example, let's say one of the basic things, I use my move action and I move my anti-tank guy one ahead. Then I will be playing my engineer card, and the engineer, let's say I'm going to move him or attack with him. Then there are these fog of war cards. These are dead cards. These are nothing, but they bog down your deck. So it's a waste of a turn. They don't do anything. Fog of war means that your soldiers are confused. They cannot see clearly. So they are neither moving, they are neither attacking, they are not doing anything. So your ideal methodology is going to be that you try to minimize the fog of war cards in your hand, and of course there are actions in these cards available which will let you remove these cards from your hand as well. Now when you are exploring this, so this is the basic deck building, but then there is a map that goes along with it, and what you're trying to do is that you have to move around this map using these cards, but that's not going to be very easy, because if you want to move to any of these tiles or regions, then you need to have scouted that region to be safe before you move. So for example, these are what these scout tokens are used for. So both players are going to have their own scout tokens. So if I have scouted this region, then I am allowed to go in this region. But before I move into the next region, I need to have scouted this region, and that's where my scout is useful for, because the scout not only can travel to unscouted regions, but when he enters them, he scouts those regions as well. But the problem of scouting more and more regions, so of course it will be ideal if you could scout everything, but the more regions you scout, the more fog of war cards get added to your deck from the supply. So next time you shuffle them, because I scouted one region, I'll be picking one fog of war card and adding it to my deck. And the more regions I scout, the more fog of war cards are going to keep coming in my deck. And that is hurtful for my future turns, because now you are having a more wider area to control and with less soldiers. So that's also thematic, that why fog of war is becoming difficult for your soldiers to control. Then that's the basic movement. How the attacks work is that in case you're using the attack action on the soldiers, you will be looking at each of these soldiers are going to have a defense value and on their token. So you're going to check their defense value plus any defense that the territory they are on is going to give them. So for example, if they are standing on this open sand area, then it shows at the bottom that it has a defense value of 0. So you're clearly visible, somebody can shoot you without. But if you were in this kind of city area, then it gives you a defense value of 1. So it's going to give you a little bit more protection. So how you're going to attack is you're going to check somebody's defense value. So for example, if I'm attacking this rifleman, he has a defense value of 4. Then he is 2 tiles away from me, so that's 6, plus the defense value of this tile is 0, so it's total 6 plus 0, 6. So I need to then roll the dice according to the number shown on my attack. So if it says attack 1, then I have a rifle only, I'm shooting 1 bullet. So I will be rolling this dice, and as long as this number is 6 or higher, then I'm going to have a hit. And as long as it hits, the other player has to sacrifice one of the cards either from his hand or from his draw deck or discard pile permanently from the game. So he has now a permanent injury and that card is gone. These act as supply. So you can ask for reinforcement, you can ask for these to come in to your deck, but by default they will remain as a supply cards. And if you run out of cards of a particular soldier in your hand, then that soldier is now permanently neutralized and that soldier will be removed from the game. How you get these cards in your hand is there are some cards in your deck which are your commanders. And these commanders, so for example, the lieutenant or the warrant officer for LRDG, these two have a value that you can bolster, which means hire more or inspire more injuries or health to your soldiers. So I will be able to, when I play those cards, then it's going to actually let me pick more cards from the deck based on the number. So let's say it's at bolster 3. So I will be selecting now which soldier is useful for me. So let's say I will be, these 3 soldiers are useful for me and I don't want them to die. So I'm going to bolster them so that they can take more injuries before they get neutralized. And these will go in my discard pile. And next time when my draw pile is completely finished or I'm unable to pick up 4 cards, then these discard pile will be shuffled back and then brought back into play. So now I have a higher probability of these soldiers which I bolstered up to come into my hand and they will get extra turns. And that's how the deck building mechanic works. Now, so it's very strategic that which cards you want to pick up, which cards you don't want, because maybe for a particular soldier you don't want to pick up their card because they are not that useful for you during that scenario. And that comes to the mission scenario part of the game, that each scenario is going to present with each of the players a different kind of challenge. Some players are going to have an objective, for example, in one mission to escape the area with their car, or they are protecting someone, they have to make them escape. In some missions, you will be getting objective to actually control some areas in the region, and as long as you have a certain number of control points, you get a victory. In some missions, you will have to sabotage enemies' existing building, fuel stations, those kind of things. So each mission is going to present a different challenge, and for that objective, you will have certain soldiers which are going to be more effective or the only ones who can perform that action. So for example, if I had to demolish a structure, then I would need either an engineer or a saboteur in my hand to actually make it work. And if the other player also recognize that, he will try to actually hurt my engineer. So I should be trying to use all my soldiers to protect the engineer and make it safe for him before I move him closer to the enemy region where he can go and demolish. And that adds another layer of strategy to this game, that how and when you should move your soldiers. If you get a card, it doesn't mean that you should be moving that soldier closer. Don't rush in like Leroy Jenkins. Just think about what you're going to do and strategize that when you should move or when you should start attacking the other player. So that gives you the basics of how the movement are going to work. Of course, there are other things, many minor rules about the territories. There will be some territories where vehicles cannot go. There will be some hills on which you will get a height advantage on attacks, and others will get a not attacks, they will get a defense advantage. Then the vehicles work in slightly similar fashion to the soldiers, that they have tokens which are on the board which represent the vehicle, physically where the vehicle is. Plus, they come with a card which tells you about the stats of that vehicle and also the spaces that are available in the vehicle for the soldiers to sit on. Each of the vehicles have 3 seats where the soldiers can sit. But these seats are going to give you different abilities that you get to use. So for example, this car, the person who sits in the front can drive the car. So unless you have a soldier sitting here, you cannot drive. Then there is a location to navigate. So navigate without moving lets you scout different regions. Then there is a suppress action. So you're throwing suppression fire on someone. It doesn't injure someone, but it lets you flip their token down that this soldier is suppressed. So next time the other player gets his card, that card just goes to waste or goes to your discard pile, just getting him back up. So that is a waste of a turn because the soldier was suppressed in previous turn. So again, a lot of actions will be available. That what are you strategically trying to do? The vehicles will be moving around. Vehicles have a higher defense value, of course, as understandable. So the players inside are going to be more protected than their normal defense value, because this time now you get to add the defense value of the vehicle rather than the soldier when trying to attack them. And some vehicles, like the tank, is not cannot be hurt by your normal bullets. So you need anti-tanks or bombs to fight against the tanks. So how you move these soldiers, once they are on a location, same with the vehicle, and you want to move them in, they move them in that vehicle and they come on the card. So that represents that inside this tank or vehicle, this soldier is sitting now on which seat. And now next time this soldier's card will come up by that player, they will be having not only access to these actions but also the additional action that the vehicle will give, and they can pick and choose which action they are going to take. So that's the gist of the game. You're building your deck of cards which shows the health of the player as well as their activation chances. You're trying to move around, you're going to sabotage other players, shoot at them, attack, try to minimize resistance and reach your objective, because rather than keeping your players alive, the important thing is completing that objective. But also at the same time, there will be only certain soldiers in your team that might be able to complete that objective, so you have to keep them alive. A lot of strategic decisions. Now comes the bad things about this game. Yes, there are a few. Due to the asymmetrical nature of this game, sometimes the scenarios might seem like unbalanced, that no, that player has an unfair disadvantage or advantage, that he has, for example, a tank and I don't have any vehicles, so I cannot shoot. Of course, each scenario is going to give you a different kind of soldier combinations, different vehicle combinations, but those situations are going to appear that sometimes you may feel that the other player's scenario is more easier than yours, or objective is more easier than yours. Then second problem is going to be that yes, the game is dependent upon these dice roll as well. So of course a machine gunner is going to have a higher probability of shooting someone because he's throwing multiple dice. But bad die rolls can ruin your game as well, because you might be throwing dice and you're just, the soldier is in front of you and you're unable to hit. And that's a slide, because after you throw your dice there is no further mitigation that you can do for your dice rolls. Then the last thing that's going to be uh, well, again, not very clear is the rule book itself. So even though the rule book is written nicely, it has sections which explains different things, but uh, there will be always scenarios that you run into, and the rule book doesn't explain clearly that okay, in such situation, then what do I actually do? So for example, let's take an example of hitting the soldiers inside the vehicle. So there is a section given in the rule book that explains how the attacks on a vehicle work. But what it says is, if the attack was a suppressing action, okay, what if it was not a suppressing action? What I was just doing a normal shoot? The book doesn't say about anything about it. So you told me about how the suppression works on a vehicle, but you never told me how a normal attack works on a vehicle. Or do I add the defense value of the soldier plus the vehicle plus the distance, or just the vehicle and plus the distance? So there are these kind of gaps, I will say, in the rule book. The rule book itself is nice, but there are gaps and different scenarios which are not covered clearly in the rule book. So you might have to go back and forth between the forums on BGG to find out a rule clarification that how does this work, which I didn't find good, because I think we played around 7 missions every time with doing something wrong with the rules, and we just couldn't bother about looking at BGG, but ended up making up our own house rule, but then later on finding that how it made the game imbalanced. So since I have covered those negative points as well, uh, they, they lead up to this asymmetry plus the unclarity of rules can lead up to, combine together, lead up to my biggest problem in the game, which is that some of these missions are going to end in 10 minutes because you messed up something, okay, or you didn't properly strategize it, and the enemy was able to kill your only soldier in one good dice roll, and you didn't have any more cards picked up even by then that time that they even killed him. Because many times what soldiers will start doing is that even if they are, since there is no range concept, it's only a defense based on the number of tiles, so they are going to start shooting at each other wherever they start from. Because if some player is on the defensive side, he will not even bother moving around. So they will not get additional fog of war cards, they will just start shooting. Because by luckily, if they do get a dice roll of 0, which represents a critical hit, which is an instant hit, uh, they will try to get those zeros while the other player is still trying to complete his other objectives, the attack inside, and the defensive player is going to win easily because they got lucky rolls and they can got to kill the player, and the game finishes very quickly. So some of these scenarios are going to end again not in a fun way. Um, Considering that there are other scenarios which are very good, which give you a real tussle between the players, the mechanisms of the game are really fun. Only there are other scenarios available in the book which are more balanced, and if that slight hit and trial you can accept in your games, then this is going to be a fun game. It has really good mechanisms that come in the game that is going to make it a lot of fun for you. Now, I do want to mention that don't think your game is going to look like this. I have these small army soldiers stuck to the tokens. That's a customization that I did in my game. Your game is going to have standard tokens The base game just come with just the base standard tokens. What I did was took some standard army men figures and cut their bases and then glued them to these tokens to make it more deluxified. But that's the gist of the game. So if you like that kind of war game, two player, and you are interested in and deck building is a mechanism that you like, then certainly try this out. It's a very unique game and it's going to be a lot of fun for players who like either deck building or war game, because it combines those two genres in a very good package. That's it for me. Hope you like this and hope you like this review. Happy gaming.